Welcome to Your Broker Room. I'm your host, Sarah Wells. Today, I'm joined with Bronwyn Penhaligon, who is a strategic psychotherapist and founder of Penhaligon Applied Psychology and a recent finalist in the Wellness Advocate of the Year 2024 for the Better Business Awards. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me. So good to be here.
So, please tell me what a strategic psychotherapist is. I'm curious.
I love this question. It's literally the first question that I get asked anytime I meet someone because they're like, cool, what the far out is that? Okay, so strategic psychotherapy is different from the typical traditional forms of psychotherapy that are more analytical based, right? So in a strategic sense, what we're doing is we're being goal orientated and solution focused. So we're all about looking at the future. Are you now and where do you want to be? And what it doesn't involve, which is a bit of a sigh of relief for a lot of people, is all of that childhood trauma stuff. We don't go digging into the past. We don't have a time machine. I can't give you a better childhood, right?
No, you can't.
So it's all about where are you now, where do you want to be, and how do we get you there real quick? And that's how we do it, through having strategic questioning, looking for those stories that you're telling yourself, the beliefs you're holding on to, that narrative in your head, and then challenging it to give you something a little bit different.
So what drew you into the finance space? And the reason why I ask you this is our industry has had so much change over the last 5 years, definitely the last 26 years that I've been in it. Mm-hmm. And what I really see is we're experiencing burnout.
Yeah.
And we don't always talk about it. I think a lot of us we don't want to admit that maybe we're feeling that we've lost our lone Joe. So how can engaging with, talking to, and for a lot of people out there that might think that, yes, we are going back in the time machine and we're talking about our mums and our dads, focusing or working with someone like yourself on a real goal-orientated, future-focused approach can really benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reason why I chose to focus on the finance sector is because I was working in it in a marketing capacity in my previous life whilst I was studying. And whilst I was working in that environment, I was seeing what was happening for the dev team, seeing what was happening for the brokers, for the leaders in the organisation, for the BDM lenders that would come in, and even right up through to having exposure to what's happening at aggregation level. So I completely understand that pretty much anyone in this environment feels like the meat in the sandwich. I mean, you're either tuna or you're chicken or you're some kind of ham.
Egg salad even.
Mate, you're literally, it's a pressure cooker, and there's a lot going on and a lot of pressure on everybody. And that's before you consider that you've got, people that you need to try and help and please and look after, including your family and yourself and your mum and your sister and your friends. You want to try and be a good human. You also have clients calling you at like 8 o'clock at night saying, hey, I'm going to, auction tomorrow. Where's my pre-approval? And then you're trying to get exemptions and you're trying to get escalations from your lenders. And they're like, man, this policy's changed. They don't actually qualify anymore. And there's just a lot going on, right?
What you really highlighted is, I think, one of the things I try and say to so many people, as a broker, what we do is more than just originating loans.
Yeah.
We can, and people tell us to be more organised. We need to take time out for ourselves. We need to focus on wellbeing. But when you're working to everybody else's time frame and also working with big organisations and corporates at a micro business level, it can be really challenging. And I think for many of us, whether you're male, female, whether you're old, young, we still have the same challenges when it comes to how do we balance that out and how do we not just maintain our well-being, but how do we show up each and every day for people that are going through one of the most stressful and probably most pivotal moments in their lifetime, which is buying a home or having something to do with money. So I understand that you also do some work with Man Talk. Can you maybe tell me a little bit more about that and how our industry could benefit from it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Man Talk initiative has literally been created on the back end of last year when we know that there was a solid handful of some really amazing men that chose to take their own lives, right? And whether these guys were working at, in lending capacity or whether they were brokers themselves, the pressure just became too much and they felt that they literally had no way out. And when that happened, some other key people in industry and myself were talking, and we were talking about, are you okay days at one thing, and that's good. And having access to going to the gym or going for a walk at lunchtime is good. But seriously, can we just call it for what it is? And it's bullshit, and we need to actually do something to stop these men from killing themselves. So we took it upon ourselves to create an opportunity for men to get together in an environment that was, no ego, no bravado, no bullshit, and actually just hold space for each other and share their own stories of mental health struggles, what's been going on for them, what they do to look after themselves, and therefore extending that to normalize the conversation and actually genuinely be there for each other as well.
And that's one of the things that we really wanted to do here with your broker room. I spoke to Mark when I was asked to take over the hosting side of things and say, what was your vision and what was your dream? And really what came to light was so many brokers work in isolation.
Yeah.
We've been working from home. We've been put in situations where there's been cost pressure margins. So those that had offices or had shop fronts have now looked to either work from home or shared office capacities. And one of the things I think we've really overlooked is the amount of pressure and strain that are put on individuals with expectations to perform. And it is so sad that so many people suffer in silence and felt the need to take their own lives. So what can anyone out there listening do to support Man Talk or get in contact or, get some help and some support and not have that shame around being in a situation where you're feeling burnt out?
Yeah, look, I think from a practical point of view, it's about engaging with each other and actually just being really honest about what's going on for you or what you're noticing in someone else's behavior. One of the things that I quite often talk to people about when given the opportunity is how to hold space for somebody. So the idea of holding space is if you acknowledge or notice that someone's a little bit off, they're not doing okay, they seem a little bit wobbly, to ask them, hey, are you okay? What's happening? Typically the response will be, yeah, man, I'm cool. But they're not, right? So don't let them have that.
So how do you get through that? Because one of the things I look at, and I think Taylor Swift said it really well, a lot of time people spend focusing on the response, the reaction that someone has, not necessarily the behaviour that's led into it. So creating space for someone is a really important part, and I'd really appreciate some tips for that. But also, what are some of the things that we can look at in our industry and shine a spotlight on so we're not pushing people into this situation where they're feeling like they can't cope?
I think it's twofold, right? So the holding space piece is about literally if someone says to you, yeah, I'm cool, and you go, no, man, that's bullshit, to actually say, are you really? Because I've noticed this behavior or this change in your vibe, and if you're not okay, let's talk about it. And then when they are talking about it and opening up, to acknowledge that you as the person asking the question, you don't have to solve the problem. You don't have to give them a solution. You just need to sit there and take yourself out of the equation, park your ego at the door and just listen actively. Be kind and generous with your time. So from that perspective, that's how you can actively look after someone that you notice is a bit wobbly. But from an industry as a whole, we just need to get better at managing expectations. Expectations of ourselves, of our team, of how much capacity people have. And then by extension of that, setting those different expectations and being more boundaried with our clients and actually saying to them, you know what, I understand that you want to call me, Mr. Client, at 7 p.m., but just like your family time is really important to you because you want to have this new home for your family to live in and enjoy, my family time is important for me too. So with respect, unless this is actually like monumentally important, please just understand that I will call you back in the morning.
Really, one of the things I see is that over the years is that busy has become the new normal.
Yes.
And we almost wear it as a badge of honour, how busy we are, how many hours we work, that we work 24/7. I mean, I remember when I first started in the industry, our greatest selling point was that we were free and we came to you. And we are so much more than that.
Yeah.
Our knowledge, our expertise and our skill. And one of the things when I was talking to Frank Gannis not that long ago was he really said that as an industry and particularly at that individual broker level, we needed to own and understand our value. So by hearing that and seeing that we need to set boundaries around expectations, I think that can also lead into this situation that I'm seeing where how we can create an industry that young people want to come into.
Yeah.
because they expect a different working environment. And I see flexible working arrangements in banks. I see an expectation around how we treat people, but I'm not yet seeing that at that individual broker level. And maybe it's something that aggregators need to think about, how they can give more support to brokers and really help us be put in that position where we can still have gas left in our tanks at the end of the day for our own families. Because we need to have our lonjo. We need to have our passion and enthusiasm.
But also, isn't that the reason why people get into this space in the first place? Isn't that one of the reasons why becoming a broker is sold to women who have children at home as this ideal state? Because you choose your hours, you run it how you want to run it, and you can still be there with your family when you need to be. But as you've just described, and as we know, the reality is, well, sure, fine, you can do the mum hours and run it that way if you like, but then it's going to be kind of limited because the expectation of clients is actually a little bit more than that.
So what I'm hearing is the industry also needs to show women, men, whether they're new recruits, whether they're people that are coming back in, is yes, there are reasons you come into the industry, but how do we set them up for success? Because one of the things I see, coming through mainstream media in our industry is that the death of the individual broker is imminent, and that brokers shouldn't be working in these part-time capacities. Now, I think if the person's got the knowledge and they've got the skill and they've got the productivity, that you can actually work hours that suit you and fit in with your clients and maintain your ability to show up, connect and deliver, rather than working 50, 60, 70 hours a week and burning out, because we need to keep great talent in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. But also going back to what you were mentioning before, how there's this new thing that we do, right, where we brag about how much sleep we don't have or how busy we are. And, we're really glorifying the grind and the hustle. And can I tell you, I work with people in this space all the time, and there is absolutely nothing impressive about burnout.
No.
Honestly, seeing someone who has reduced themselves to feeling like an absolute wisp of their identity is just nothing short of heartbreaking. And it takes a really long time to recover from that, to rebuild from that, as you know with your own story.
And so many people suffer in silence. I mean, I shared with you before we came on air, is I relocated from one side of the country to the other because I burnt out.
Yeah.
I am just as profitable and productive and have time to connect and come in and give back to my industry because I started to look after myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because ultimately what I believe is the greatest asset to our industry are our brokers, particularly from an aggregator level, particularly from a lender level, and they really need to focus on how to keep us happy, productive, and keep us in the industry, because people are coming in, but they're not staying.
Yeah.
I don't know that many people that have been around 26 years, such as myself.
Because again, they're being sold a dream that's not the reality, right?
So how do we reshape that? How do we change it? And what do you say to someone out there that is on the verge of burnout or might quite possibly be suffering in silence? How do we get them back into performing at a high level? And how do we shift our industry from one that is on the brink of burnout into one that's performing and sustainable?
I think the first thing we need to do is actually take this shit seriously. When we don't look after our mental health, we literally are at risk of putting ourselves in very, very real danger. So you can delay someone's pre-approval and maybe they can't bid at auction, right? But when it comes to if you're delaying looking after yourself week after week, month after month, you are literally just fast-tracking your way into being, absolutely feeling hopeless and helpless and falling into a very deep depression. And as we know, depressed people kill themselves, right?
They do. And it's a real thing, and it's a sad thing that no one wants to talk about. It's dark. It's not something that, you want to jump on a podcast and talk about. The sad statistic that people in our industry are in a situation, whether it's from their job or whether it's from not having time to allocate to their personal life and their family or financial pressures, that they felt the only option was to take their own life. So how do we change that? And what would be your suggestion to a broker that is listening today that feels that they are on the verge of burnout, or to reshape the conversations that we have? What would you say to them?
To pause, to breathe, to pull back, right? Because particularly when you're running really fast and you're holding on to a lot, you're doing a lot of over responsibility. So you're caring about things or taking responsibility for stuff that's literally not your job, right? So you're worried about what your client's doing or not doing. You're worried about your team's doing or not doing. You're wanting to affect change on things that literally are not your job, your responsibility, not part of your remit. So it's about asking yourself, what am I in control of here and what am I not in control of? If I stop injecting myself into this thing, does that mean that the world will fall apart? Is something terrible going to happen as a result?
We're not cardiothoracic surgeons. That's what I remind myself when I get caught up. I go, Sarah, you're not a doctor. No one's going to actually die.
Yeah.
Someone will be disappointed in you, quite possibly. And sometimes they tell me, sometimes they don't. But what I'm really hearing is that stop, drop and roll. It's a little bit like running like you're on fire.
Pretty much. But it's also like being really real with yourself of like, why am I even in this in the first place? Why, what am I doing this for? And it goes one of two ways, right? A lot of people are doing it because they've got this altruistic thing. They've got this vision of their future. They've got this castle in the air that they're pushing towards. And that's gorgeous and beautiful. But if you're doing that and you're doing those 70-hour weeks, when you finally get to what enough looks like, you may turn around and be like, hey, family, only to realize they're not actually there anymore because they haven't seen you, they don't know you, and to be honest, they're kind of bored of the whole show. So you get your castle, but you're all alone.
So you really highlighted that factor, that something that I've really tried to bring into the conversations that we're having, which is the next gen. So I remember having a conversation many years ago with James Simon about, getting to 50%. If we could get to 50% of loans originated, we were pretty much at that point where our future was solid for us. The concern I have today is it's not about the Australian public wanting to use us. It's the fact that in 5, 6, 7 years' time, there won't be that new talent wanting to come in because our industry isn't attractive and we are wearing this badge of honour of being super busy and superhuman. So if we're looking at now 2024, what are the things that we could actively change, or those expectations around putting brokers and their practices in the best position to change the industry, but also make it attractive? Because, not sleeping, working huge amounts of hours, working on weekends. Like,
oh my God, it's so awesome.
These are things that are just not sustainable. So that they still have families, whether they choose to have them. They have time to walk their dog. They have time to engage in self-care. Like, what's something that we can practically, either champion?
So if there was one wish or one hope that I could have for the industry as a whole, it would be that we give as much airtime to upskilling people in a way that they can genuinely help themselves in a really positive way as we give to giving lender updates. Like if we could actually...
I like that. I really do like that, because we have this conversation a lot about giving value to brokers at conferences, at PD days. And, there will be lenders listening today. There'll be aggregators. There'll be, the people that really shape the education that we have is to skill us to be more effective humans at looking after ourselves.
Yeah, because business is about relationships at the end of the day. That's why people go into broking, because they actually want to help people. They want to have that moment where they see that connection and that excitement of, here's the keys to the car, or, here's the keys to the house, here's the champagne, congratulations, so wonderful. Then they start building wealth, they're building bank, they come back and they're like, hey, you helped me with this, can you help my friend? It's relationships.
So if I'm looking at where I started in the industry in my journey over a period of time and hearing your experience and also, where you focus around wellbeing and this strategic psychotherapy is, we're talking about AI, we're talking about lots of things that are coming into the sector. If I could think about what my dream for 2024 and beyond is really about positioning brokers to have more gas in their tank and more availability to show up for people, because it's that connection. Being able to connect with our clients, being able to help them in real time is what's going to keep our gas tank full and also us happy and positive. So with the changes we've seen, I am so pro-regulation and compliance. Like, I believe it makes our industry better, but it's also the thing that has put so much stress,
pressure,
expectations and pressure. So really, if there's someone listening out there today that wants to come in and really add value to brokers, it would be, in my opinion, and I'd really be interested to hear your thoughts, in using AI and using tech to strip out the computer-facing, document-facing aspects of our role and allow us to really use our skill set, and that is connect, have conversations, and inspire Australians around financial literacy.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what the tech's there to do, right? It's to be a tool for you, not to replace you. It's actually to fast track you. It's to get you away from all of those tasks that are literally just sucking your time and energy.
They're almost depressing. Like, I love data.
Man,
I love data.
Spreadsheets, seriously.
But I spend more time. That's why I love coming on and connecting and doing things like the podcast, because I get to have great conversations. I spend so much of my time staring at screens, staring at reports, reading policy. And I'm a pretty happy person. And if I feel burnt out and I feel tired, then I can't imagine what it would be like for so many people out there that are either new and have got huge amounts of ground to cover.
Yeah, such a steep learning curve too, right? Like I work with a couple of new brokers at the moment, they're around the country. We have Zoom sessions to, just kind of check in. And the learning curve in that first, let's call it 2 years, it's not a curve. It's a vertical climb, right? Let's just call it for what it is.
It's pushing the Titanic up Everest and around a corner.
Pretty much. But again, particularly for women coming into the industry where they're sold this whole, oh yeah, you can do it during school hours. They're like, holy mother far out. How am I supposed to get my head around all of this? And then, because they're an itty bitty fish in a very flooded pond, they're like, hey, BDM, can you come and help me with this? Can you show me how to use, your software? Can you explain to me your policy? And they're like, yeah, maybe just come to the next PD day. I'm really busy. And so they're so isolated.
And then we're putting more pressure on BDMs as well. I mean, I get some BDMs responding at 10, 11 o'clock at night on emails. Like, we really do need to continue this conversation.
Yeah.
And my dream is that 2024, 2025 is that time period where we start to understand the things that we need to structurally change within our industry to support new to industry brokers.
Totally.
But also those that have been here for decades.
Yeah.
Because they're tired. And if it's a situation where people are feeling like they need to take their own lives and they're in a position where they don't know where to ask for help, that's something that we can change, and we have a responsibility. And hopefully the Your Broker In podcast can be one little step each week where people can connect, get some habits, some tips. And I would love to talk to you further about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
In how we can help brokers just have more gas in their tank, so at the end of the day, they can go and live their very best lives.
I'll share a little story with you, Sarah, which is one of the reasons why I decided to pivot in the first place, right? So many moons ago, when I was working in advertising land, I finally decided that, you know what, as much as my husband was running his life and doing his thing and being this big high-level executive and pushing really hard, and we had a small child, it was 9 at the time, I actually, you know what, it's my turn. I want to have a big career. We can have 2, that's fine. Maybe he needs to make some concessions, and maybe we just need to be more organised. So I decided to take on a big career, which required more commuting. And there were most days during the week that our son would wake up to an empty house because both the parents had gone to work. His food was ready for him, but he had to get himself to school, and he'd come home to an empty house. And then we'd come home and I'd be doing calls with London, and husband would be doing husband things. And it got to a point one day I came home from work. The front door was wide open. My son's school bag was in the kitchen. And I hung up the call that I was on. And I'm going up through the house looking for him, calling out to him. And I heard a noise on the roof. And my son, at the age of 9, was standing on the roof of our house and with tears streaming down his face. And I said to him, honey, what are you doing? He said, well, I thought I'd just get out of the way so that you and Dad can have your careers and be happy. And I was like, you know what, this stops right now.
I don't know how many people would have the vulnerability and the honesty to share that story. But I think it's so important that we each take a step towards being vulnerable and sharing those moments that happen in the shadows that we don't talk about.
Because it's the only way it moves forward. Right?
Because there's so many little people out there whose parents are on the phone talking to clients about important house purchases or dealing with BDMs or things like that we can forget that there are so many other people that count on us too. So
absolutely.
I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to come and talk with me, so that there can be one person out there that can hear that story that might decide to end their day differently to the way that they thought about doing it now. Thank you for being you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.